The Valley of the Kings, also known as the Valley of the Gates of the Kings, is a valley in Egypt where, for a period of nearly 500 years from the 16th to 11th century BC, rock-cut tombs were excavated for the pharaohs and powerful nobles of the New Kingdom. The valley stands on the west bank of the Nile, opposite Thebes, within the heart of the Theban necropolis. The wadi consists of two valleys, the East Valley and the West Valley. With the 2005 discovery of a new chamber and the 2008 discovery of two further tomb entrances, the valley is known to contain 63 tombs and chambers. It was the principal burial place of the major royal figures of the Egyptian New Kingdom, as well as a number of privileged nobles. The royal tombs are decorated with scenes from Egyptian mythology and give clues as to the beliefs and funerary practices of the period. Almost all of the tombs seem to have been opened and robbed in antiquity, but they still give an idea of the opulence and power of the pharaohs. This area has been a focus of archaeological and Egyptological exploration since the end of the 18th century, and its tombs and burials continue to stimulate research and interest. Since the 1920s, the valley has been famous for the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, and is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. In 1979, it became a World Heritage Site, along with the rest of the Theban necropolis. Exploration, excavation and conservation continues in the valley, and a new tourist center has recently been opened. Geology. The Valley of the Kings is situated over 1,000 feet of limestone and other sedimentary rock, which form the cliffs in the valley and the nearby Deir el-Bahari, interspersed with soft layers of marl. The sedimentary rock was originally deposited between 35 and 56 million years ago during a time when the Mediterranean Sea sometimes extended as far south as Aswan. During the Pleistocene, the valley was carved out of the plateau by steady rains. There is currently little year-round rain in this part of Egypt, but there are occasional flash floods that hit the valley. These floods dump tons of debris into the open tombs. The quality of the rock in the valley is inconsistent, ranging from finely grained to coarse stone, the latter with the potential to be structurally unsound. The occasional layer of shale also caused construction difficulties, as this rock expands in the presence of water, forcing apart the stones surrounding it. It is thought that some tombs were altered in shape and size depending on the types of rock the builders encountered. Builders took advantage of available geological features when constructing the tombs. Some tombs were quarried out of existing limestone clefts, others behind slopes of scree, and some were at the edge of rock spurs created by ancient flood channels. The problems of tomb construction can be seen with the tombs of Ramses III and his father Setnakht. Setnakht started to excavate KV-11 but broke into the tomb of Amenmès, so construction was abandoned and he instead usurped the tomb of Tuzrit, KV-14. When looking for a tomb, Ramses III extended the partly excavated tomb started by his father. The tomb of Ramses II returned to an early style, with a bent axis, probably due to the quality of the rock being excavated. Between 1998 and 2002, the Amarna Royal Tombs Project investigated the valley floor using ground-penetrating radar and found that, below the modern surface, the valley's cliffs descend beneath the scree in a series of abrupt, natural shelves, arranged one below the other, descending several meters down to the bedrock in the valley floor. Hydrology. The area of the Theban Hills is subject to infrequent violent thunderstorms, causing flash floods in the valley. Recent studies have shown that there are at least 7 active flood stream beds leading down into the central area of the valley. This central area appears to have been flooded at the end of the 18th dynasty, with several tombs buried under meters of debris. The tombs KV-55, KV-62, and KV-63 are dug into the actual wadi bedrock rather than the debris, showing that the level of the valley was 5 meters below its present level. After this event, later dynasties leveled the floor of the valley, making the floods deposit their load further down the valley, and the buried tombs were forgotten and only discovered in the early 20th century. This was the area that was the subject of the Amarna Royal Tombs Project ground scanning radar investigation, which showed several anomalies, one of which was proved to be KV-63. History. The Theban Hills are dominated by the Peak of Alkern, known to the ancient Egyptians as Ta-di-Hent, or the Peak. It has a pyramid-shaped appearance, and it is probable that this echoed the pyramids of the Old Kingdom, more than 1,000 years prior to the first royal burials carved here. Its isolated position also resulted in reduced access, and special tomb police were able to guard the necropolis. While the iconic pyramid complex of the Giza Plateau have come to symbolize ancient Egypt, the majority of tombs were cut into rock. Most pyramids and mastabas contain sections which are cut into ground level, and there are full rock-cut tombs in Egypt that date back to the Old Kingdom. After the defeat of the Hyksos and the reunification of Egypt under Ahmose I, the Theban rulers began to construct elaborate tombs that reflected their newfound power. The tombs of Ahmose I and his son Amenhotep I were probably in the 17th dynasty necropolis of Dra Abu el Naga. The first royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings were those of Amenhotep I, and Thutmose I, whose advisor, Ineni, notes in his tomb that he advised the king to place his tomb in the desolate valley. I saw to the excavation of the rock tomb of His Majesty, alone, no one seeing, no one hearing. The valley was used for primary burials from approximately 1539 BC to 1075 BC. It contains at least 63 tombs, beginning with Thutmose I and ending with Ramses X or XI, although non-royal burials continued in usurped tombs. Despite its name, the Valley of the Kings also contains the tombs of favorite nobles as well as the wives and children of both nobles and pharaohs. Therefore, only about 20 of the tombs actually contain the remains of kings. The remains of nobles and of the royal family, together with unmarked pits and embalming caches, make up the rest. Around the time of Ramses I, construction commenced in the separate Valley of the Queens. Royal Necropolis. The official name for the site in ancient times was the Great and Majestic Necropolis of the millions of years of the pharaoh, life, strength, health in the west of Thebes, or Ta Sekhet Mat. At the start of the 18th dynasty, only kings were buried within the valley in large tombs. When a non-royal person was buried, it was in a small rock-cut chamber, close to the tomb of their master. Amenhotep III's tomb was constructed in the western valley, and while his son Akhenaten moved his tomb's construction to Amarna, it is thought that the unfinished WV-25 may have originally been intended for him. With the return to religious orthodoxy at the end of the 18th dynasty, Tutankhamun, A, and Horemheb returned to the royal necropolis. The 19th and 20th dynasties saw an increase in the number of burials, with Ramses II and later Ramses III each constructing a massive tomb used for the burial of their sons. There are some kings that are not buried within the valley or whose tomb has not been located. Thutmose II may have been buried in Dra Abu el Naga, Smenkhkare's burial has never been located, and Ramses VIII seems to have been buried elsewhere. In the Pyramid Age, the pyramid tomb of a king was associated with a mortuary temple located close to the pyramid. Since the tombs of the kings in the Valley of the Kings were hidden, the kings' mortuary temples were located away from their burial sites, closer to the cultivation facing Thebes. These mortuary temples became places visited during the various festivals held in the Theban necropolis. Most notable is the beautiful Festival of the Valley, where the sacred barks of Amun-Re, his consort, Mut, and son, Khonsu, left the temple at Karnak in order to visit the funerary temples of deceased kings on the west bank and their shrines in the Theban necropolis. The tombs were constructed and decorated by the workers of the village of Deir el-Medina, located in a small wadi between this valley and the Valley of the Queens, facing Thebes. The workers journeyed to the tombs through various routes over the Theban hills. The daily lives of these workers are quite well known due to their being recorded in tombs and official documents. Amongst the events documented is perhaps the first recorded workers' strike, detailed in the Turin Strike Papyrus. Exploration of the valley. The valley has been a major focus of modern Egyptological exploration for the last 2 centuries. Prior to this time, it was a site for tourism and antiquity. The area illustrates the changes in the study of ancient Egypt, starting as antiquity hunting, and ending as scientific excavation of the whole Theban necropolis. Despite the exploration and investigation noted below, only 11 of the tombs have actually been completely recorded. Many of the tombs have graffiti written by those ancient tourists. Jules Baillet has located over 2,100 Greek and Latin instances of graffiti, along with a smaller number in Phoenician, Cypriot, Lycian, Coptic, and other languages. The majority of the ancient graffiti is found in KV9, which contains just under 1,000 of them. The earliest positively dated graffiti dates to 278 BC and 1799. Members of Napoleon's expedition to Egypt drew maps and plans of the known tombs, and for the first time noted the Western Valley. The description de l'Egypte contains 2 volumes on the area around Thebes. European exploration continued in the area around Thebes during the 19th century. Early in the century, the area was visited by Giovanni Belzoni, working for Henry Salt, who discovered several tombs, including those of Ai in the West Valley in 1816 and Setia the following year. At the end of his visits, Belzoni declared that all of the tombs had been located and nothing of note remained to be found. Working at the same time was Bernardino Drovetti, the French consul general and a great rival of Belzoni and Salt. John Gardner Wilkinson, who lived in Egypt from 1821 to 1832, copied many of the inscriptions and artwork in the tombs that were open at the time. The decipherment of hieroglyphs, though still incomplete during Wilkinson's stay in the valley, enabled him to assemble a chronology of New Kingdom rulers based on the inscriptions in the tombs. He also established the system of tomb numbering that has been in use, with additions, ever since. The second half of the century saw a more concerted effort to preserve, rather than simply gather, antiquities. Auguste Mariette's Egyptian Antiquities Service started to explore the valley, first with Eugène Lefebvre in 1883, then Jules Baillet and Georges Benedit in early 1888, and finally Victor Loret in 1898 to 1899. Loret added a further 16 tombs to the list, and explored several tombs that had already been discovered. During this time Georges Darcy explored KV9. When Gaston Maspero was reappointed as head of the Egyptian Antiquities Service, the nature of the exploration of the valley changed again. Maspero appointed English archaeologist Howard Carter as the chief inspector of Upper Egypt, and the young man discovered several new tombs and explored several others, clearing KV42 and KV20. Around the start of the 20th century, American explorer Theodore M. Davis had the excavation permit for the valley. His team discovered several royal and non-royal tombs. In 1907, they discovered the possible Amarna period cache in KV55. After finding what they thought was all that remained of the burial of Tutankhamun, it was announced that the valley was completely explored and that no further burials were to be found. Davis's 1912 publication, The Tombs of Harmhabi and Tutankhamunu, closes with the comment, "I fear that the Valley of Kings is now exhausted." After Davis's death early in 1915, Lord Carnarvon acquired the concession to excavate the valley, and he employed Howard Carter to explore it. After a systematic search, they discovered the actual tomb of Tutankhamun in November 1922. Various expeditions have continued to explore the valley, adding greatly to the knowledge of the area. In 2001, the Theban Mapping Project designed new signs for the tombs, providing information and plans of the open tombs. Tomb development. Location. The earliest tombs were located in cliffs at the top of scree slopes, under storm-fed waterfalls. As these locations were filled, burials descended to the valley floor, gradually moving back up the slopes as the valley bottom filled with debris. This explains the location of the tombs KV62 and KV63 buried in the valley floor. Architecture. The usual tomb plan consisted of a long inclined rock-cut corridor, descending through one or more halls to the burial chamber. In the earlier tombs, the corridors turned 90 degrees at least once, and the earliest ones had cartouche-shaped burial chambers. This layout is known as bent axis. After the burial, the upper corridors were meant to be filled with rubble and the entrance to the tomb hidden. After the Amarna period, the layout gradually straightened, with an intermediate jogged axis, to the generally straight axis of the late 19th and 20th dynasty tombs. As the tomb's axis straightened, the slopes also lessened. They almost disappeared in the late 20th dynasty. Another feature that is common to most tombs is the well, which may have originated as an actual barrier intended to stop floodwaters from entering the lower parts of the tomb. It seems to have developed a magical purpose later on as a symbolic shaft. In the later 20th dynasty, the well itself was sometimes not excavated, but the well room was still present. Decoration. The majority of the royal tombs were decorated with religious texts and images. The early tombs were decorated with scenes from Amduat, which describes the journey of the sun god through the 12 hours of the night. From the time of Horemheb, tombs were decorated with the Book of Gates, which shows the sun god passing through the 12 gates that divide the nighttime and ensures the tomb owner's own safe passage through the night. These earliest tombs were generally sparsely decorated, and those of a non-royal nature were totally undecorated. Late in the 19th dynasty, the Book of Caverns, which divided the underworld into massive caverns containing deities as well as the deceased waiting for the sun to pass through and restore them to life, was placed in the upper parts of tombs. A complete version appears in the tomb of Ramses VI. The burial of Ramses III saw the Book of the Earth, where the underworld is divided into 4 sections, climaxing in the sun disk being pulled from the earth by Nonet. The ceilings of the burial chambers were decorated with what became formalized as the Book of the Heavens, which again describes the sun's journey through the 12 hours of night. Again from Seti I's time, the Litany of Re, a lengthy hymn to the sun god, began to appear. Tomb equipment. Each burial was provided with equipment that would enable a comfortable existence in the afterlife. Also present in the tombs were items used to perform magic rituals, such as shaptas and divine figurines. Some of the items may have been used by the king during his lifetime, and some were specially constructed for the burial. Tomb numbering. The modern abbreviation KV stands for King's Valley. In 1827, Wilkinson painted KV numbers over the entrances to the 21 tombs that lay open in the East Valley at that time, beginning at the valley entrance and moving southward, and labeled 4 tombs in the West Valley as WV1 through WV4. The tombs in the West Valley were later incorporated into the East Valley numbering system as WV22 through WV25, and tombs that have been opened since Wilkinson's time have been added to the list. The numbers range from KV1 to KV64. Since the early 19th century AD, antiquarians and archaeologists have cleared and recorded tombs, with a total of 61 sepulchres being known by the start of the 20th century. KV5 was only rediscovered in the 1990s after being dismissed as unimportant by previous investigators. Some of the tombs are unoccupied, others remain unidentifiable as regards to their owners, and still others are merely pits used for storage. Most of the open tombs in the Valley of the Kings are located in the East Valley, and this is where most of the tourist facilities are located. 18th Dynasty. Urface. The tombs gradually became more regular and formalized, and those of Thutmose III and Thutmose IV, KV34 and KV43, are good examples of 18th Dynasty tombs, both with their bent axis and simple decoration. Perhaps the most imposing tomb of this period is that of Amenhotep III, WV22, located in the West Valley. It was re-investigated in the 1990s by a team from Waseda University, Japan, but it is not open to the public. At the same time, powerful and influential nobles began to be buried with the royal family. The most famous of these tombs is the joint tomb of Yuya and Chuyu, KV46. They were possibly the parents of Queen T. Until the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, this was the best preserved of the tombs that had been discovered in the valley. Amarna period. The return of royal burials to Thebes after the end of the Amarna period marks a change to the layout of royal burials, with the intermediate jogged axis gradually giving way to the straight axis of later dynasties. In the Western Valley, there is a tomb commencement that is thought to have been started for Akhenaten, but it is no more than a gateway and a series of steps. The tomb of I, Tutankhamun's successor, is close by. It is likely that this tomb was started for Tutankhamun, but later usurped for I's burial. This would mean that KV62 may have been I's original tomb, which would explain the smaller size and unusual layout for a royal tomb. The other Amarna period tombs are located in a smaller, central area in the center of the East Valley, with a possible mummy cache that may contain the burials of several Amarna period royals, Tiansmenkhare or Akhenaten. In close proximity is the burial of Tutankhamun, perhaps the most famous discovery of modern Western archaeology. It was discovered here by Howard Carter on November 4, 1922, with clearance and conservation work continuing until 1932. This was the first royal tomb to be discovered that was still largely intact, although tomb robbers had entered. And until the excavation of KV63 on March 10, 2005, it was considered the last major discovery in the valley. The opulence of his grave goods notwithstanding, Tutankhamun was a relatively minor king, and other burials probably had more numerous treasures. In the same central area as KV62 and KV63, is KV64, a radar anomaly believed to be a tomb or chamber announced on July 28, 2006. It was not an official designation, and the actual existence of a tomb at all was dismissed by the Supreme Council of Antiquities, prior to finally excavating and describing it during 2011 to 2012. The nearby tomb of Horemheb is rarely open to visitors, but it has many unique features and is extensively decorated. The decoration shows a transition from the pre-Amarna tombs to those of the 19th dynasty tombs that followed. 19th dynasty. The 19th dynasty saw a further standardization of tomb layout and decoration. The tomb of the first king of the dynasty, Ramses I, was hurriedly finished due to the death of the king and is little more than a truncated descending corridor and a burial chamber. However, KV16 has vibrant decoration and still contains the sarcophagus of the king. Its central location makes it one of the more frequently visited tombs. It shows the development of the tomb entrance and passage and of decoration. His son and successor, Seti I's tomb KV17, is usually regarded as the finest tomb in the valley. It has extensive relief work and paintings. When it was rediscovered by Belzoni in 1817, he referred to it as a fortunate day. The son of Seti, Ramses II, constructed a massive tomb, KV7, but it is in a ruinous state. It is currently undergoing excavation and conservation by a Franco-Egyptian team led by Christian Leblanc. The tomb is vast in size, about the same length, and a larger area, of the tomb of his father. At the same time, and just opposite his own tomb, Ramses enlarged the earlier small tomb of an unknown 18th dynasty noble for his numerous sons. With 120 known rooms, and excavation work still underway, it is probably the largest tomb in the valley. Originally opened in antiquity, it is a low-lying structure that has been particularly prone to the flash floods that sometimes hit the area. Tons of debris and material has washed in over the centuries, ultimately concealing its vast size. It is not currently open to the public. Ramses II's son and eventual successor, Meremta's tomb has been open since antiquity. It extends 160 meters, ending in a burial chamber that once contained a set of 4 nested sarcophagi. Well decorated, it is typically open to the public most years. The last kings of the dynasty also constructed tombs in the valley, all of which follow the same general pattern of layout and decoration. Notable amongst these is the tomb of Siptah, which is well decorated, especially the ceiling. 20th dynasty. The first ruler of the dynasty, Setnakht, actually had 2 tombs constructed for himself. He started excavating the eventual tomb of his son, Ramses III, but abandoned that dig when it broke into another tomb. He then usurped and completed the tomb of the 19th dynasty female pharaoh, Tusrit, KV14. Therefore, this tomb has 2 burial chambers, the later extensions making this one of the largest of the royal tombs, at over 150 meters. The tomb of Ramses III is one of the largest tombs in the valley and is open to the public. It is located close to the central rest area, and its location and superb decoration make this one of the tombs most visited by tourists. The successors and offspring of Ramses III constructed tombs that had straight axes. They all had similar decorations. Notable amongst these is KV2, the tomb of Ramses IV, which has been open since antiquity, containing a large amount of hieratic graffiti. The tomb is mostly intact and is decorated with scenes from several religious texts. The joint tomb of Ramses V and Ramses VI, KV9, is decorated with many sunk relief carvings, depicting illustrated scenes from religious texts. Open since antiquity, it contains over 1,000 examples of graffiti written in ancient Greek, Latin, and Coptic. The spoil from the excavation and later clearance of this tomb, together with later construction of workers' huts, covered the earlier burial of KV62 and seems to have been what protected that tomb from earlier discovery and looting. The tomb of Ramses IX, KV6, has been open since antiquity, as can be seen by the graffiti left on its walls by Roman and Coptic visitors. Located in the central part of the valley, it is between and slightly above KV5 and KV55. The tomb extends a total distance of 105 meters into the hillside, including extensive side chambers that were neither decorated nor finished. The hasty and incomplete nature of the rock cutting and decorations within the tomb indicate that the tomb was not completed by the time of Ramses' death, with the completed hall of pillars serving as the burial chamber. Another notable tomb from this dynasty is KV19, the tomb of Mentuhotep. This small tomb is simply a converted, unfinished corridor, but the decoration is extensive. The tomb has been newly restored and opened for visitors. 21st dynasty and the decline of the necropolis. By the end of the New Kingdom, Egypt had entered a long period of political and economic decline. The priests at Thebes grew more powerful, and they effectively administered Upper Egypt, while kings ruling from Tanis controlled Lower Egypt. Some attempt at using the open tombs was made at the start of the 21st dynasty, with the high priest of Amun, Kinijim I, adding his cartouche to KV4. The valley began to be heavily plundered, so during the 21st dynasty the priests of Amun opened most of the tombs and moved the mummies into 3 tombs in order to better protect them. They removed most of the treasure in order to further protect the bodies from robbers. Most of these were later moved to a single cache near Deir el-Bahari. Located in the cliffs overlooking Hatshepsut's famous temple, this mass reburial contained a large number of royal mummies. They were found in a great state of disorder, many placed in others' coffins, and several are still unidentified. Other mummies were moved to the tomb of Amenhotep II, where over a dozen mummies, many of them royal, were later relocated. During the later Third Intermediate Period and later periods, intrusive burials were introduced into many of the open tombs. In Coptic times, some of the tombs were used as churches, stables, and even houses. Minor tombs in the Valley of the Kings. The majority of the 65 numbered tombs in the Valley of the Kings can be considered as minor tombs, either because at present they have yielded little information or because the results of their investigations were only poorly recorded by their explorers. Some have received very little attention or were only cursorily noted. Most of these tombs are small, often consisting of only a single burial chamber accessed by a shaft or staircase with a corridor or a series of corridors leading to the chamber. Nonetheless, some are larger, multiple-chambered tombs. These minor tombs served various purposes. Some were intended for burials of lesser royalty or private burials, some contained animal burials, and others apparently never received a primary burial. In many cases these tombs also served secondary functions, and later intrusive material has been found related to these secondary activities. While some of these tombs have been opened since antiquity, the majority were discovered in the 19th and early 20th centuries during the height of exploration in the valley. Tomb robbers. Almost all tombs throughout Egypt have been robbed. Several papyri have been found that describe the trials of tomb robbers. These date mostly from the late 20th dynasty. One of these, Papyrus Meyer B, describes the robbery of the tomb of Ramses VI and was probably written during year 8 or 9 of Ramses X, around 1118 BC. The foreigner Nesimon took us up and showed us the tomb of King Ramses VI, and I spent 4 days breaking into it, we being present all 5. We opened the tomb and entered it. We found a cauldron of bronze, 3 wash bowls of bronze. Confessing to their crimes, the thief goes on to add that a small quarrel arose amongst the robbers when it came to equally dividing the spoils collected from the tomb. Tombs were filled with valuables, therefore a prime motivation to rob them. Thieves often looted the chambers and bodies of mummies and took with them precious metals and stones, the most common gold and silver, linens and ointments or unguents. Often tombs were robbed when they were still fresh because many of the valuables buried with the mummies were perishable. The valley also seems to have suffered an official plundering during the virtual civil war, which started during the reign of Ramses XI. The tombs were opened, all the valuables were removed, and the mummies were collected into 2 large caches. One in the tomb of Amenhotep II contained 16, and others were hidden within Amenhotep I's tomb. A few years later most of them were moved to the Deir el-Bahari cache, containing no fewer than 40 royal mummies and their coffins. Only tombs whose locations were lost were undisturbed during this period. The oldest of the 7 wonders of the world, the Pyramid of Giza, was built by King Khufu, the most powerful ruler of the Old Kingdom. In the largest of the pyramids a system of tunnels was put in place to deter thieves from robbing the tomb. Sources suggest that until the 9th century AD the pyramid remained sealed untouched by robbers, however these intruders also imply that once in the king's chamber they saw the mummy had been taken and the sarcophagus opened. Tombs were ransacked for their valuables but also for their original primary purpose. Once robbed, an empty tomb could be used as a burial place for another mummy, which is exactly what happened in the smallest of the pyramids of Giza. Tourism. Most of the tombs are not open to the public, and officials occasionally close those that are open for restoration work. The number of visitors to KV62 has led to a separate charge for entry into the tomb. The West Valley has only one open tomb, that of I, and a separate ticket is needed to visit this tomb. The tour guides are no longer allowed to lecture inside the tombs, and visitors are expected to proceed quietly and in single file through the tombs. This is to minimize time in the tombs and prevent the crowds from damaging the surfaces of the decoration. In 1997, 58 tourists and 4 Egyptians were massacred at nearby Deir el-Bahari by Islamist militants from Al-Ghama'a al-Islamiyya. This led to an overall drop in tourism in the area. On most days of the week, an average of 4,000 to 5,000 tourists visit the main valley. The West Valley is much less visited, as there is only one tomb that is open to the public.